Welcome, everybody, back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and you already know the drill. We're going to be breaking down all the NFL action today. Week 10, the first week in which we have also had NBA basketball. That's actually not true, the second week, but whatever. There was a stacked slate of NBA games today, too. That was fun. Got to watch some of those later in the day when we had fewer NFL games going on. We're not going to talk about them, but that just has me in a euphoric state, Logan. As a sports fan, I just had so much fun watching all the sports today, and we had a beautiful closing act to it all with just the masterpiece that was the 7-interception Texans-Lions Sunday Night Football showdown. The Lions, Logan, become the first NFL team to win the game after their quarterback threw 5 or more interceptions since the Falcons in 2012. Shout out Matty Ice for that. What do you take away from this game? What does this say about Detroit?
I think it says a lot, Carson. I mean, this is a game that Super Bowl contenders win. I don't know if this is a game that the Lions could have won a year ago. I don't know if this is a game that the Lions of 2 years ago could have won. You're on the road. Your quarterback single-handedly gives you 5 turnovers. You're trailing 23-7 at half, and this team ends up persevering. I mean, this is just a game that you're not supposed to win whatsoever, and they kept battling. They kept fighting. This defense shuts out the Texans in the second half. They don't allow a single point. Some things have to break their way, but they come up big. Carlton Davis comes up huge in the second half with 2 interceptions. Fairbairn misses the field goal, and at that point, after Fairbairn missed the field goal, all the momentum was completely in Detroit's favor, and it felt like they were going to steal this football game. But, Carson, what's the one thing that I've been saying about the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings all year long? We can prop up these teams and how great they are, how good their defenses are, how great these teams are top to bottom. The secret recipe in all of this is limiting how much Sam Darnold and Jared Goff have to do. And I find it incredibly ironic that the day that Sam Darnold's bozo gene showcases itself is the same day that Jared Goff's bozo gene showcases itself.
Something was in the water, I think.
Dude, something in the air today. I don't know what it is, man. The universe is trying to send us a message. It comes out in both of these guys today. That's the secret recipe. You got to limit how much these guys have to do within the offense. And when you overtask them, they can get completely rattled and throw games away for you. But it's like, damn, man, if the Lions are going to win a game in which Jared Goff throws 5 picks, are they going to lose again? That's how I come away. I just feel like this completely legitimizes the Lions as a real deal Super Bowl contender. I've felt like this from week 1, from the preseason. I picked the Detroit Lions to win the Super Bowl, but this, I think, completely reinforces the fact that they are here, that they are alive. You win a game in which the biggest variable in your football team, it swings in the complete wrong direction. He has the worst game he could possibly have, and it doesn't matter. You persevere. I think this is a statement win for the Detroit Lions. They are here. They've been here. They have not arrived. They've been here, and they stamped that with this one. This is a very good win for Detroit, man.
Well said, dude. I feel like having a quarterback throw 5 interceptions and still winning experience is a very unique one, and it's not one that many modern fan bases can share. But you have the two sides of the coin of, dear God, our quarterback is capable of something this atrocious. He's a guy who's liable to throw 5 interceptions in the game. There's not many of those dudes around anymore. But at the same time, we are good enough to withstand that and overcome that. And once it became clear that they had, Logan, I texted you in our group chat when they were down 10, 13, 23. I said, I think the Lions are going to win this game. When they got it down to 20-23, I said in our group chat, the game's over. And I cracked myself up because I was like, hold on, maybe settle down a little bit there, Bronco. They're still losing the game, but I just felt like they were in complete control. And they're just such a superior football team to Houston. And that's another two-sided issue where, yes, that says a lot about Detroit in the positive direction. It also says a lot about the state of the Houston Texans right now, and we'll get to that. I expected this game to be a blowout, is what I said last week. It wasn't that, but it probably would have been if Jared Goff didn't throw 5 interceptions. Let's be honest, it was really 4 interceptions and a Hail Mary, and it was arguably 3 interceptions, a fumble, and a Hail Mary interception, but 5 interceptions goes down on the stat sheet, and it's just a beautiful stat line for the books. But on both sides of the ball, I thought Detroit was outstanding when they needed to be. It does really start on the defensive end, though, dude. And that was the story last week, right? They dominate the Packers, but they don't put up a ton of yardage offensively. That is defensive dominance. Even the Titans game, when they hang 52, if I'm not mistaken, they had like 250 yards of offense in that game. I mean, it was short fields that they were setting up with their defense. It was special teams plays. And that's the big difference. This has been a top 5 offense last year, the year before that even. And although I think this is the best they've ever been offensively with the growth of Jameson Williams, Goff up to this point playing the best that he has, the real improvement we've seen is defensive. They come into today top 5 in terms of points per drive allowed, and it's the secondary, right? The fact that now they have the best safety tandem in football, and they have corners who have significantly improved. I thought Brian Branch was unreal again in this game. I thought you saw on the last several Texans drives, there's just nothing there. Guys just aren't open. And I know that people will talk about the non-pass interference call on Arnold that arguably could have ended this game in the Texans' favor, given them a first down at the very least and the opportunity to bleed the clock. I didn't have a problem with the no call, and the reason for that is that Anzalone got the tip, and I understand that arguably the pass interference happened 1 second before the tip or a split second before the tip, but that wasn't going to be a catchable ball either way, and so I have no problem with the refs not deciding the game on their whistle when that's the case. But it's just outstanding, and they shut down the run all game, and we know that this is a group that down Aiden Hutchinson, sure, but last year was an elite run defense. And we got to remember they're getting Zadarius Smith in there, who's just another dynamic pass rusher up front. So that to me is really the convincing part of this win. It's just the continued stout defense from Detroit against an offense that has some limitations, but an elite quarterback puts up 23 points on you in the first half. How do you respond? Flawlessly. I thought it was a flawless second half defensively. And this offense is just a powerhouse, man. They're just a juggernaut. And I understand that the stats aren't crazy in this game. That's because Jared Goff threw 5 interceptions. When it comes down to these gotta-have-it spots, you're just so confident in them being able to eat clock and grind out first downs on the ground. Because outside of Baltimore, they have the best run game in football, and they have the best trench personnel in football, and they have one of the absolute best third down receivers in football, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who in any of those third and medium situations, I'm as confident in as anybody on the planet. And for the most part, Goff is not Jared Goff. He hasn't been this year. And in those big moments down the stretch, he was able to avoid being Jared Goff, right? You need a 3rd and 6. He finds Amon-Ra St. Brown. This team is tremendously talented. I think they are tremendously well coached. I think they are tremendously tough, and they are much more complete than previous iterations that we've seen. I do think they're the clear NFC favorite. You can talk about them versus Kansas City. Who do you think is top dog in the league? I don't think there's a case you can make for another NFC team over Detroit. And in some ways, seeing them at their worst in this game is what cements that. When you can have the worst case scenario from your biggest question mark and you overcome that and you beat a good team on the road, that says all you need to know.
And the mental component of it too, man. This team's mentally tough. Like, it's hard on you when your quarterback is shitting his pants actively during the game. He's got 5 turnovers. That's a very easy situation where you could quit. This team doesn't. They've got a lot of fight. They believe the whole way through, and they got it done. Also, the biggest difference has been how great the defense has been situationally. I trust them in a different way in big spots. This is the number 4 red zone defense in all of football, and they're the number 1 third down defense in all of football. That's been the biggest turnover, right? The secondary is improved, and they have lost a little something in Aiden Hutchinson, but the front's been great. The linebackers have been great. The secondary has been great. And when they've needed to hold up, again, they hold the Texans to 0 second-half points. They forced 2 big turnovers in the second half. Carlton Davis comes up huge, and they're the best third down defense in football. They're complete now. There's no holes in this team. Last year, it was the secondary, right? The defense was young. They were bad situationally. They don't have those holes anymore, and I think this is a top 2 offense in football. So when we're looking at the top contenders, the one adjustment I would make from my power rankings, we're not going to do them this week, I would probably drop the Ravens to my number 3 team in the NFL. And it's a tough judgment call, but it's like that secondary is disastrous. And we'll talk about that towards the tail end of the show, but they have a glaring weakness. The Lions don't. That's a huge difference. I'm blown away. You know, after the 5th pick, I was like, I mean, there's no way they can win this game. And then you're sitting there in the 3rd and you're going, well, damn, it's only a 10-point game. Like, I can't write them off just yet. And they
Yeah.
get this done. This is an unbelievable win that instills even more confidence in me with Detroit, dude. I'm moved by this. And they were I got to give you props too. I know they were your number one team coming into this week, man. They held on. They at least give you they keep the argument alive for you.
Yeah, I was worried that for the second time this year in which I put the Chiefs at number 2 in my power rankings, the team I put at number 1 was going to have a disaster class right after, but not the case, dude. The Lions held on. Shout out Kaylee, by the way, in the chat for the generous donation to the Nerd Sesh Foundation. On the flip side of this, though, dude, I don't think Houston is very good right now. And you mentioned our power rankings. I mean, I had a real Sophie's choice last week, man. I was very, very close to putting Pittsburgh above them because of the offensive growth we've seen from Pittsburgh and knowing that they have such a stout elite defense. Meanwhile, Houston has just been really sputtering offensively. But I thought at the end of the day, I do really believe in the defense. I do really believe in CJ Stroud. Let's hold out a little bit longer. But I've been leaning towards putting Pittsburgh above them, potentially putting the Chargers above them. And I think that that is cemented in this game. Again, even though they were in position to win. And obviously, they're still without Nico Collins. He gets back. He helps this offense. They won't be getting Stephon Diggs back at any point. But this was a bad CJ game. And we've seen some bad CJ stat lines in recent weeks that I didn't think were on him nearly as much as this game, right? Where like against the Packers or last week against the Jets, like he just doesn't have time to throw and guys just aren't separating. So it's like, yeah, the completion percentage is rough. The raw yardage isn't there, but he's not really making mistakes so much as he just can't make magic happen out there on some of those really big downs. I thought that he had a couple of bad turnovers in this game. And late in the game, like, I got to give props to the Lions defense for covering receivers really well, but you got to be able to get some first downs at the end of this game. And you got to be able to put up a single field goal in the second half. And I'm not going to blame Kaimi Fairbairn for missing a 58-yarder, dude. I mean, as great as he is, that's at best a toss-up. It's 58 yards out. But the real problem with this offense is still this offensive line. It wasn't as glaring in this game, but it's a bad offensive line. Yeah, it wasn't glaring in this game at all, but they still really, really struggle to run the ball in this game. So I just don't think the Texans are a complete football team. I do like what they have defensively with the pass rush, and I do like their secondary, and I love CJ Stroud, but I'm just seeing a team that is struggling week after week, and there are teams that have their elite foundations, right? If it's what the Chargers are doing defensively right now with the quarterback play that they're getting, the Steelers, again, with their defense and a significantly improved offense, the Texans don't have that like bankable elite aspect as a football team right now. And that to me just continues to drop them in my AFC hierarchy. Like, I think there's big separation between the top 3 teams and them. And then we're talking Steelers, I think, are better than them right now. Chargers, I think it's really close.
Well, I'll expand it to some other teams. I'll ask you a question about them overall here in a minute, but I disagree with you. I mean, I think the offensive line was glaringly bad in this one too. Maybe not as much with the pass rush, but dude, they notched 56 yards on 28 carries. Yeah. They have 2 yards a carry in this one. It's like, I know the Lions' defensive front is menacing, but they're down key personnel. Everybody is at this point in the season. It's a reality of football, right? You're going to be missing guys. It's next man up. Who can step up? And there seems like there's a really big burden on CJ Stroud. I think Mixon opened up a dynamic early on in this year when they were able to run the football that they hadn't had before. But the Texans are just kind of coming apart at the seams, dude. And like you said, I don't think there's anything elite that they do well. And in a lot of ways, they're just average. And when CJ can't go above and beyond, which he's really struggling to do down Nico Collins, this is an average football team. I mean, I was going to ask you, my question specifically was going to be, do you think the Texans right now are closer to like the Steelers and Chargers, or do you think they're closer to like the New York Jets, man? I mean,
well, what's hard about that is in this game, they're without 2 of their 3 best players, right? Without Will Anderson and Nico Collins. And those guys are coming back. It's not like Diggs where those guys are gone for the year.
Yeah, I just mean,
I definitely think the first pack, well, based on the last few weeks, obviously the Jets dogged them last week, but let's be real. I mean, the Jets, yeah, they've had a couple games slip away. They're still 3-7, and they're still fundamentally cursed. So if we're looking future, I think that they're in Chargers conversations, honestly. I think the Steelers are better than them, and I wish that I had the ball to say that last week because I felt it in my heart and I felt it in my loins and I knew it. But I wanted to give respect to CJ. CJ's just not enough, and this defense is good, but it's not a dominant unit.
Well, I mean, this game directly, I'll go ahead and it's on CJ. Like, I put this loss is entirely on CJ. Like, in the second half, if you come away, if you don't just give the ball away to Carlton Davis twice, you win this one. Like, and this is a learning experience, I hope, for CJ, where it's like, you just have to understand the game script a little more, man. You have to understand situationally, like, you just got to put up points. In a situation like this, when you have such a big lead, 16 points at a point in this game, like, you just have to squeeze whatever points you can out of drives. You can't afford to give away drives like that. And I think he really cost them at the end of this game, not being able to get a few first downs. That makes all the difference. I do put this one on CJ, but I agree with you. At this point, I would put them behind LA too. I'd put them behind the Chargers. I think the Chargers defense has been playing better. I trust Justin Herbert to make more plays. The running game is better. The offensive line is better. Yeah. I would put the Texans convincingly at 6 right now. Yeah, it's 6, stamped in the AFC. We'll see what they look like when Will Anderson and Nico Collins return, but they're sorely missed right now. CJ gave this one away, man, and the Texans are slipping, dude. They're slipping fast. They got to get a game that corrects course, and it's got to happen sooner rather than later.
Obviously, they're still going to kind of sleepwalk to the AFC South title just because nobody else is good. The Colts will have a light end to their schedule. I just don't think the Colts are good, and the Texans have a nice little stretch coming up that they can feast on. Cowboys, Titans, Jags, Dolphins. They could clinch the division right there. But when we're talking about their expectations, they're not going to live up to the bar that some people had set for them. I didn't come into this year thinking they were a contender in the AFC. I thought they were the 4th best team in the AFC. But now they have slipped further than that. The one bright spot in this game, I mean, Owen mentioned it in the chat, the John Mechie conversation. John Mechie's good, dude. And that was the thing that I was kind of most excited about with this Texans team. Unsurprisingly, the receiving core as a whole, but the depth, dude, I was like, you got John Mechie hidden in this depth chart. They cut Woods, Noah dude. Brown. They cut Noah Brown, dude. Yeah. I mean, talk about an embarrassment of riches. Noah Brown's very solid. He is a legitimate NFL receiver. So that's the good thing. And obviously that's an awesome story because he missed his rookie year with cancer. So like, that's incredible to see him back out there on the field. And Dalton Schultz is a very good receiving tight end, but the Texans are a deeply flawed football team, and I don't think you can really come away with any other takeaway after seeing the last several weeks as they've just been struggling week after week. Shall we talk, Logan, about the Kansas City Chiefs and their voodoo magic, escaping against the Denver Broncos with the blocked field goal to end that game? What do you take away from that?
The Chiefs win games that nobody else could. I mean, are we really surprised? Like, even at the end of the game, it was like, man, this just feels like a little too good to be true, right? It's their identity at this point. You can take that to the bank. Like, this is just what the Chiefs do. It's
blood magic.
Well, I mean, when a team does this enough over and over again, it just becomes who they are, becomes your identity. It's like when the Patriots, no matter what you do, it would be insurmountable. That's why it was such a big deal when the Tom Brady Patriots lost, because they never did. Their identity was no matter, no way, no how, they're going to figure out how to win games. And that's exactly what happens. It's not luck. It's the Chiefs' identity. And I saw a lot of people saying that this was the worst undefeated team they had ever seen. To that point, I will say directly, does anybody remember the 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers?
Amen, brother. I do.
I certainly do too. They broke my freaking heart, man. I was delusional.
Well, what about the 8-0 Bengals too? I mean, anybody saying that is being silly.
The Andy Dalton Bengals.
Yeah. What was that? 2014 that they started 8-0.
I mean, come on, dude. That was a joke team from the beginning. So
yeah, well, but the Steelers meltdown was legendary.
And you could see it coming from a mile away, man. They were eking out wins against bummy teams. But
2015 Bengals, I'll correct myself.
To those arguments, there is some merit. The Chiefs have the worst point differential of any team to start a season 9-0. That's 34 teams in NFL history, and that's no cutoff date. That is since the inception of the NFL, dating back to, the 20s and the 30s. They're plus 58. Carson, you want to take a stab at who could potentially be number 2?
Who could potentially be number 2 in terms of 9-0 starts? I don't know, the 2020 Steelers?
Give you a hint. They won the Super Bowl, this team.
Whoa, Nelly. I'm trying to think recent years. Who is it?
The 2006 Colts. They're number 2.
Wow.
That team was plus 60. But I just want to set the table a little more. Not only is this team 9-0 on the season, they're 15-0 when we're counting consecutive weeks dating back to last season. It's tied 11th, the longest winning streak in NFL history. And Patrick Mahomes, they flashed this up on the broadcast, has the best record of any starting quarterback in NFL history when trailing by double digits. He's 19-14 with a winning percentage of 57.8. That's a reality with this football team. They break the rules of football. They break all conventional mathematics or historical precedents. The Chiefs are an anomaly. Like, they just change everything. It doesn't matter. You can throw all numbers. He's the only one with a winning record in those games. The next closest guy is like, I think it was Otto Graham with like a 42% winning percentage.
All he did was win games.
Yeah, and even him, it's like Mahomes breaks the mold. And so when I come away with all that, I know a lot of people have been very underwhelmed. I think this is the most dangerous Chiefs team of the Mahomes era. This team right now is number 1 in 10-plus TD drives. They're number 1 in third down offense. They're number 2 in plays per drive. They're number 2 in time of possession. So you may be underwhelmed by the lack of explosiveness, the lack of shot plays. This is the Kansas City Vice. They get up on you. They keep games tight. They squeeze you and bleed you dry. And if they leave any meat on the bone at the end of the game, they're going to eat it off and they're going to win. I mean, to the wire here. 16-14, they block a field goal to win this one. And the reason I say this is the most dangerous version of the Chiefs, it's the best defense they've had. They're dominant. Mm-hmm. They have a great running game. They are exceptionally well coached. They have no weaknesses, and they are excellent situationally. Again, third downs in the red zone with the game in the balance, it feels like they're going to come away. And I know that his numbers are underwhelming. Mahomes is still very much doing his thing. When this team needs him in a big moment, he is making the play. Again, it doesn't look like the team that we grew accustomed to with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and they're having 50-point shootouts with the Rams, and they're slinging the ball all over the field. That's not what this team does anymore. And the addition of DeAndre Hopkins is the reason that I say that they're still very dangerous. It has made this offense still really hard to cover. It's very different, right? It's Kareem Hunt and DeAndre Hopkins. It's not Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco. It looks a little bit different. But Hopkins is weaponizing Travis Kelce. He is opening up space because he takes so much attention over the top. You remember last week the shot plays that they hit on with D-Hop, right? Teams are very much afraid of that. Teams are very much afraid of Kareem Hunt in the box. Like, I mean, that's just a reality. Carson, they're not going to beat the hell out of teams anymore by 20 points. They're not going to beat you by multiple scores. They're likely not going to win by 10 points. But they're going to squeeze you out. They're going to bleed you dry, and they're going to eke it out. I trust this team to win tough games. It's what they've done all season long, man, and they haven't lost one yet. It's like you can be underwhelmed, and you know what? Like, they're susceptible to losing. Like, I don't think there's a huge gap between them and the Lions or them and the Ravens. But every week, man, as I see this Ravens secondary falter, I just question myself in the back of my mind because I want to be right with my preseason prediction. I want to stay true to it. The Ravens-Lions Super Bowl. But every week that the Ravens secondary sucks this bad and every week the Chiefs keep winning tough games, I just question myself, how the hell can I pick against this football juggernaut, dude? I still feel like the Chiefs are the best team in football, and it's because they win games like this.
They're one of a kind. I think if any other team were 9-0 and were 9th in the league in point differential, we would be looking at them and saying, okay, that's a massive red flag, right? We'd be saying 2022 Vikings, 2020 Steelers, last year Eagles, the way they started the year. We'd be saying this is a clear indication that you're not as good as your record. It's just kind of impossible to view it that way when these are the Kansas City Chiefs and the back-to-back champs, and we now have 15 games in a row where they haven't come close to beating the brakes off of anybody. They just grind out wins. It's really interesting that you say this is the best, most dangerous Chiefs team ever. That was my expectation in the preseason. I thought the offense would look a little bit more dynamic than this, but I do think with the addition of D-Hop, this still can be a really good offense. And the run game isn't efficient. It hasn't been all year. Like, they're towards the bottom of the league there, but they do really commit to the run game. And I do think that that's a valuable stabilizing aspect of this offense. And they've definitely been relying on Kelsey a good bit over these last couple weeks, right? He set a career high in receptions last week, but they're getting Nuke Hopkins more integrated into the offense. And I do think that he's just by default wide receiver one here when you look at everybody else who's in the group. And like Xavier Worthy, not a guy who's going to have a consistent impact, but he can give you that single boom explosive play that you didn't have that sort of speed on the team last year, right? I mean, he was open for a touchdown today on a go. Mahomes just missed him. Mahomes just let him out of bounds. So you consider all those factors and that, like, yeah, even though Mahomes hasn't played nearly his best football this year, I'm not worried about that. And this is the best defense that they've had. You could argue last year's, but I think that this group is every bit as good, maybe even a little bit better. It makes sense to still say that they're the best team in football. I will say the Lions, I do think, are clearly much more capable of explosions. I think are probably more talented overall, but they don't have Patrick Mahomes. They have Jared Goff, who today was just slinging the ball around to everybody, regardless of jersey. He was jersey colorblind. Regardless, they're just professional winners. This is what they do, and this one wasn't pretty, but a lot of their wins this year haven't been pretty. I did think the Broncos defense was outstanding. I thought that they were really excellent against the run in this game. I mean, the running backs only had 42 yards on the ground for the Chiefs, and they got 4 sacks. They got after Mahomes in some big spots too. You also do have some missed opportunities for the Chiefs offense. Mahomes missing Worthy on a potential touchdown. The big one, which was really surprising, was 3rd and goal, down 14-13. Travis Kelce was sitting wide open in the back of the end zone, and Mahomes just missed him. So they definitely did leave some meat on the bone in this one. Like, I get it. We can mythologize the Chiefs and we can say, oh my God, this is what they do. They're professional winners. This game, like, they did win on a blocked field goal against a team that isn't that good. So obviously they didn't nearly play up to their potential. They still won. They deserve credit for that, but this wasn't a good Chiefs game. Like, I don't want to spin it to be that. And this did ultimately tell us a lot about the limitations of the Denver Broncos, who I think are a perfectly fine football team. Logan.
You're gonna use this game to
They didn't score a point in the last 36 minutes of the game.
Dude.
They didn't score a point in the last 36 minutes.
Why do you hate
How
Bo
can you
Nix
say that
so
doesn't
why
say
do you
anything
ha-
about
why
the
do
team?
you
I
hate Bo
don't.
Nix so much, man?
You don't even let me talk, buddy, because I've been too hard on Bo. I think that
Let's
Bo is
go.
okay. I think that Bo is okay. I certainly don't think he's ever going to be a franchise quarterback.
Have you moved him out of Will Levis territory? Is he beating the Will
Yes.
Levis allegations?
Yes, I think I've had him clear of Will Levis. I've always said Will Levis is just a buffoon. I mean, he's got more physical tools. No, maybe there was a time when I said, I don't know, I just rather have Levis's upside. I could believe that I said that earlier in the year. I'm not high on Bo. He made some plays in this one. He hit the big shot play to Cortland Sutton, and the 3rd and 6 conversion was big, right? He had to move around a little in that pocket, sort of a sidearm release. Nice little sexy arm angle there, and that put them in position to win the game. And the big thing with Bo is he still has his physical limitations in terms of arm talent. He still misses stuff, right? I don't know that I can say he's a very good decision maker.
That's the most frustrating aspect of Bo.
Yeah, but the good part is first 2 weeks, it was like, okay, this dude is unwatchably bad, and the turnovers were killer. He had 4 picks in the first 2 weeks. Last 8 weeks since then, he's only got the 2 picks. So there's just some moments, right? There's another play. You're up 14-13. You're just outside field goal range. So you have the potential to put the Chiefs in a position where they have to get a touchdown, right? They can't take a field. And they're showing blitz. And instead of identifying a hot route, trying to get the ball out quickly, Bo just sprints backwards 15 yards. And he takes a huge loss on a sack. There's just some situational stuff like that. There's some physical stuff where I do think that he's falling short. But look, man, he's a rookie quarterback. He doesn't have good offensive personnel around him. I've probably been too hard on him, or maybe just too permanent in my analysis because I do think that Bo was unspeakably horrible earlier in the year. He played some of the worst games that I've seen from any quarterback this year, but he's gotten better. There's no question that he's gotten better. And I think that maybe I put too hard of a ceiling on him because of that. But that is the thing with the Broncos, man. This offense just isn't good. And I do think they've beaten up on some bad teams. Defense is really good. Offense is not. That's why they're not a great candidate to beat the Chiefs, even though they almost did it. And God bless them for that. But at the end of the day, even if you do lose on voodoo magic because you get a blocked field goal, you can't be mad if you didn't score in the last 36 minutes of the game.
Yeah, I think Bo is going to be all right. And I've stayed consistent on that. I think Bo is going to be a guy that can win you football games. Now, is that going to be like an upper echelon? I mean, he's not even going to smell Darnold or Goff territory, right? I think we're looking at a guy who's who's right below that? Like, Bo Nix could be like budget Baker Mayfield, like on his best day.
He does not have that sort of aura. He kind of does have the balls. Bo is not afraid.
That's why I
reference the Ari Aster movie. Bo is not afraid, but he doesn't have Baker's arm.
That's why I said budget. You're getting the clearance version, man.
Okay.
The dollar store
Wish.com version. Sure.
Yeah, the Temu Baker Mayfield. You're getting Bo Nix. I think Bo's going to be all right. And I got to give credit. I think this defense is great. I am astounded at this one season turnaround. This is the same team that got 70-piece last year by the Miami Dolphins. And I'm also surprised that this is after they trade away Browning, who was a really good player for this defense too. I really like this secondary. I think the pass rush has played really well. I like John Franklin Myers. I'm impressed. And that's what I mean. Is like, I think that Bo can be their guy. And I don't know what ceiling Bo puts on. Bo probably puts you can win a playoff game. And that's probably it. You're flaming out. And that's probably his ceiling. But this team isn't that bad. I think if they can figure it out offensively in this offseason, get him some more big boys, some offensive linemen up front, please, dear God, build out this receiving room. And don't get me wrong, Bo is definitely at fault sometimes, but Lil Jordan Humphrey, that dude sucks. I have watched enough Lil Jordan Humphrey tape. I don't like picking on receivers. That guy can't catch. He can't run routes. He has no, he stinks, man.
He's small.
Dude, he's just bad. There's not a ton of depth. I like Troy Franklin. Even though they played at Oregon together, Bo Nix and Troy seem like they have no chemistry whatsoever. So, there's definitely some stuff to figure out offensively. But I think the Broncos are going to be a little feisty contender over the next 3 to 4 years with Bo in this defense, man. And that's all right. I don't want to oversell Bo. I don't want to pretend like I think Bo's going to be an average quarterback in this league. But I think he's a guy that you can win games with.
I want to be clear. I only said Lil Jordan Humphrey is small because his name is Lil. I was making a fun of you guys. Don't go around getting all hyped up about that because he's not actually small. The thing is, if you're looking long-term, we know that it's harder to retain elite defenses year after year. I think Vance Joseph has done a really good job with this defense too. Do you think that the Broncos are the front runner for that 7 seed in the AFC?
Front runner. Let's go. I mean, Steelers and Chargers, I think, are the no-brainer right
Absolutely.
now.
That's why I'm saying 7 seed.
Here, actually,
they're 3 and 7. They've got to be cooked.
I was
Bengals
just looking.
4 and 6. Colts are 4 and 6.
I was just looking at my.
I think the Bengals are the best team.
Right now, I updated my power rankings during Sunday night. The Bengals are my next best team in the AFC.
Yeah,
just because I prefer
a game to make up.
I prefer that punch of Burrow and Chase. So if you were asking me to pick, I'd take the Bengals just because I think they're the better team. But
okay,
their defense is horrible. That's a toss-up. But if I had to bet, I'd say either the Bengals or the Broncos are going to do it. I wouldn't take any other team.
If I were viewing it from the perspective of the Bills, who are likely going to get the 2 seed, who would they play as the 7 seed? I'm just saying, in terms of who would I rather face as a fan of the Bills, there's not a question that I would rather face the Denver Broncos, even though I think the Bills are a way better football team than the Bengals. I don't think the Bengals are a very good football team. I just wouldn't want to see Joe Burrow if the alternative is Bo Nix in this offense. They can't win a playoff game with this offense.
Exactly. The Bengals can throw a playoff win punch. The Broncos can't.
We shot against the Ravens, right? I mean, they let up 35, but they could have put up 36.
I mean, they could have gone to OT in that game too. I mean,
yeah.
Cincy's scary. You don't want to see that team. They're the scariest team that you would not want to run into.
They're the scariest team that isn't good. How about that? Because they're not good. Let's be honest.
No,
They're
they're
not. They're
not.
4-6 for a reason.
And
But they
the
have an
one
elite quarterback and
the
an elite receiver.
the one thing I might give Denver the edge though in is the fact that their schedule is going to be a little bit easier just because since he's still got some in division games to play
Mhm.
and the AFC North is still cut. I mean, even games against the Browns are going to be tough.
Yeah,
Every game is going to be tough for the Bengals. There's not going to be anything easy. Their defense can't stop nobody.
agreed. Last thing on this game, who do you think has more voodoo magic, Chiefs or Steelers? Because I put out
Steelers.
this
Don't even
poll.
do that.
You
Don't
think
even
it's the
do that.
Steelers? Bro, okay, I put out this poll. I don't know what it ended up at. Maybe like 90-10. It was 97% Chiefs with hundreds of votes. Everybody was saying Chiefs. And I said, that's a bit short-sighted, I think, because the Steelers
You
do
put
this
them up
year
against the
after
Steelers.
year. I said Chiefs or Steelers, who has more voodoo magic?
Against
People
the
were acting
Steelers.
like I was
We've been
Bozo
doing
the
this
Clown.
bro. I will never forget. I think the best instance of Steelers voodoo magic is that Week 1 Buffalo Bills Steelers game where who did we start at quarterback? Was it Kenny Pickett? Did Kenny Pickett beat Josh Allen that day where we blocked that punt?
That was before Kenny.
Was
That
it
was
Big
Mason,
Ben? Or it
I
might have been.
think.
I can't
All
remember,
right,
but
let's go look. I hated that game.
I know you hated that game because we had no business winning it, but yeah, that blocked punt. That's the biggest instance. I mean,
Yeah, that must
what
have been Big Ben, unless was Ben hurt?
when you think of my thing is on that debate, when you think of voodoo magic, special teams, blocked field goals, blocked punts, big returns, interceptions, game swinging, who do you think of the Steelers? Like,
I
come on.
agree. I agree. It was Ben who started that game, by the way. Then we got you back the next year, and I was in person. It was 38-3. That game Mason started, and I loved it. I agree, though. The stat that I tweeted out, bro, the last 4 years, the Steelers have a minus 44 point differential, and they are 11 wins above 500. Like, yeah, the Chiefs are doing this now. You know what they also used to do, though? They were just way better than everybody else, right? They beat you by 21 all the time, okay? This has been the Steelers' formula throughout this decade at this point, and they're the best at it. So I agree. I still think it's the Steelers, but I do think the Chiefs are really close now because they've definitely made some deals with some unsavory underworld types, and they're reaping the rewards. For now, who's to say what will happen to them in the afterlife? But for now, they are reaping the rewards. Let's talk about your Steelers, though, Logan, because they got a big old win today, didn't they? 28-27. They knock off the Commanders. Speaking of voodoo magic, they won their game in a voodoo magic fashion, not as dramatic as blocking a field goal, but 4th and 1. They have a decision. They send the offense out there and they draw a neutral zone infraction. And so they just win the game without even having to snap the ball. How encouraged are you by this win for Pittsburgh?
A little bit. I am encouraged a little bit. And I think these teams are really evenly matched. They were basically beside one another in my power rankings, or the Commanders and Steelers were separated by 2 teams. Either the Chargers were at 11 or the Commanders were at 11. Take your pick. So I was expecting a really evenly matched game, but I'm surprised we won because this is the worst game Russell Wilson has played in a Steelers uniform. He converts just 50% of his passes in this one for 195 yards and 3 TDs, and he throws a pick. But you see the difference. Teams are afraid of Russell Wilson airing the ball out deep because he keeps doing it, and he's still willing to take shots downfield, even down to the final TD to Mike Williams. Like, pressure gets home. That's a veteran QB throw. You feel the blitz come home. You know that you've got man coverage on the back end. It's one up. You just got to throw a jump ball, and he just puts it up there for Mike. And the TD to George Pickens, like Russ is just going to air that thing out, and it opens up everything for this offense. Because I saw some dude on Twitter tag me and was like, "Oh yeah, man, does Fields still deserve the job?" And it's like, bro, I conceded after 1 week that Russell Wilson should have been the starter. Like, I was wrong.
It takes a man to admit when he was wrong, Logan, and
Yeah.
that's what you are.
I'm wrong a lot. Yes, astute observation. I was
That's
wrong.
not what I was saying. I was saying
Thanks.
you're a man,
Thanks,
buddy.
bro. I'm a man. My fault, guys. I said that I thought Fields should have been the starter, and I've been wrong. The numbers prove it. Even when, and I still fundamentally believe this too. I think Justin Fields gives you a higher floor as a quarterback because of what he can do athletically. I think the absolute floor with Russ is lower than Fields, but the ceiling is so much higher. And the numbers will back this up. In 6 games with Fields, the Steelers offense averaged 298 yards per game. With Russ in 3 games, they've averaged 382.
Edged.
That's a very big difference.
You're thinking about Jake Bates. He kept edging us on all those kicks.
Oh my gosh, dude. Those are 2 of the closest kicks I've ever seen. And he
Literally.
laced both of them.
He edged us.
Shut up, bro.
He did.
With Fields, the Steelers averaged 21 points a night. With Russ, they averaged 30 a night. So a 9-point per game difference. And again, it's just the threat of them having to balance putting more guys in the back to not allow those big shot plays. It opens up the running game for Najee and Jaylen Warren. And this was really evenly matched. Both teams gifted each other's touchdowns. Pittsburgh, with their fake punt inside the 20.
The font.
Phenomenally executed. Wide open. James Pierre's wide open. He just drops the ball. Gives them an Eckler TD. Later in the game, Olamide Zaccheaus muffs a punt. It was the second muff punt he had. They end up recovering the first one. This one they don't. That gives them a Freiermuth TD. And then both teams make mistakes. Russell Wilson throws an interception. Jaylen Warren fumbles the ball at the goal line. But Washington can't overcome their own mistakes because you mentioned the penalty that gives us the first down that wins us the game. Earlier in the game, Washington has 2 penalties that lead to a George Pickens TD, a defensive pass interference, and a roughing the passer that extends a drive. Also, heroic George Pickens TD, man. That dude's a
oh my God.
Like, I've been trying to tell people, like, his body control and hand-eye coordination is on a different level. George is an alien. Like, literally just throw the ball in his general vicinity. Throw it in the same zip code as George Pickens, and he will probably come down with it. But Pittsburgh did answer the call to me. Carson, you asked if I was impressed by this. The reason I'm most impressed is I wanted to see us win with a different game script. I've wanted to see the Steelers win trailing in football games. You talk about the formula that the Steelers have won with over the past decade. It has been grind you out. It has been win defensively, and it has been eking out winning games. When teams get a lead on the Steelers, they lose 10 times out of 10. If you get a two-score lead on the Steelers, it's over. They trailed 24-14 in this one, and they end up winning 28-27. It's one of the most impressive wins of the year. Anytime the Steelers come from behind and win, it blows me away. It's been the Achilles heel of this team. When the offense gets down, we cannot generate enough points at the end of football games. And that's what Russell Wilson has done. In 2 of his wins this year, they've come from behind and won. So, yeah, I'm really impressed. And I think the Steelers are deservedly a top 10 team in my eyes. Like, I still don't know if I'm going to pick the Steelers to win a playoff game. It's all going to be circumstantial. I may choose us to crap our pants again in the wild card, but I will say this. This is the best team we've had, I think, since the team that won the Super Bowl or went to the Super Bowl, in 2011, top to bottom. And I think this is the best offense the Steelers have had post Big Ben. I've said that since the beginning of this year, and I still believe that. Is that going to lead to a playoff win? Damn it, I don't know. But I can tell you this is the best Steelers team in a long time. And I'm happy, man. I'm so happy. I'm happy to watch a Steelers football game now, man. I'm not sitting on pins and needles. I think that we're going to pull games out. They've answered the call a couple times this year, man. Are you meaningfully moved by this game as well?
This is the direction I've been trending, man. I mean, you were talking to me like I was too high on the Steelers last couple weeks. The Steelers with an offense that is even average are a really good football team. And I think this offense is at least average, dude. I was wrong about Russ as well. I thought that it was the wrong decision. And I think that clearly we can now say what you've given up in terms of the run game and the constant rushing threat that you have with Fields, what he can do with his leg, you gain back more than that with the ability to actually hit these vertical routes, right? Get these chunk plays through the air, because that's kind of what swings this game. I mean, especially, dude, 3rd and 9 from the 32, facing pressure, facing a blitz. Russ is just so accurate. He has such great touch on those deep balls. And by the way, it's Mike Williams, Logan, who we were kind of digging on last week. He makes the game-winning play. And
dude, he played 9 snaps in this game.
9 snaps, but he can run a go route. Let me tell you that. And that he did. And also the Pickens play. I mean, that's an unbelievable play by Pickens, but what does Russ do? He gets the ball in a spot where only his receiver can catch it. It's a deep ball. The touch is there. The placement is there. And that is a meaningful difference in this offense because it makes them, although not a more effective rushing offense, because I still think they're better running the ball when Fields is in there. As you say, like, it does balance out this offense. It makes the passing attack more respectable. It makes it so you can't just load up the box in the same way. So I'm moved here. I mean, you said it. They're averaging 30 points per game and Russ starts. The Pittsburgh Steelers are doing that, Logan. And this wasn't like some offensive masterclass because, as you mentioned, they do get gifted great field position on one drive. And it was a rough first half offensively outside of one nice touchdown drive that they had. But there's no question this is the best the offense has looked in at least a half decade. And there's no question that this is the best that the Steelers have looked. I don't know if I'd go quite as far back as you. I might go to like the 2016 range where you just had such dynamic offenses, but it's a very, very complete team. And I do think they're capable of winning a playoff game. I wouldn't put it beyond that. I think there's a difference between the top three teams and the Steelers because I do still think this offense has its limitations, but it's head and shoulders above what they've had the last few years.
I agree. And you make an important distinction there. Maybe I should say it's the most complete team we've had since the Super Bowl team, because the reason I say that is the 2016, and I made this distinction last episode, but the 2016 team and 2017 and those iterations with the Killer Bees, they could go toe-to-toe with anybody because they could score as many points, but the defense was going to give it right back. Those secondaries were atrocious. We're talking about Artie Burns and Antoine Blake. I still got PTSD of those guys getting burnt. But this team feels like the most complete since the Super Bowl team. And you talk about in years previous, it's not even close. The veteran presence and control that we get at that position. And that's what I said in preseason when all the delusional idiots that talk about the Steelers wanted to say that this is the year that Mike Tomlin poops his pants and the Steelers fall apart and we crumble. And I go, guys, we had Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Matt Canada in, oh my gosh, dude, Mitch Trubisky. Like, we have a borderline Hall of Fame level quarterback with his resume. And we have a former.
Well, let's not revisit that one, Logan.
Talent.
Let's not pretend that he's playing at that level. He has the experience, sure.
Are you always trying to put? I'm not arguing that, bro. I'm not arguing that Russell Wilson.
I'm just saying, I feel like that's kind of a crazy way to put it, because he's not doing that right now.
But he's a Hall of Famer. Yeah, I think he's an arguable Hall of Famer. Look, man, I'm not saying I got prime Dan Marino back there slinging the rock. I know what Russell Wilson is at this point in his career. But again, in comparison, when you're talking about the experience that Russell Wilson has had, he's played as many big football games as Big Ben has. And that's really, really valuable when you're talking about the caliber of the rest of this roster. And more importantly, the responsibility that Russell Wilson has in this offense compared to what he had to do in Denver. They were asking him to be an MVP-level quarterback in Denver and to carry this offense that had a bad offensive line and bad receiving talent and a very bad running game. And here, that's the last, before I go into a big spiel about the Steelers, the last group I do want to give props to is the offensive line. George Pickens is a great number one receiver. I think Mike Williams is a good addition. I really like Calvin Austin. Najee and Warren get a lot of credit as a good dynamic duo in the backfield. The offensive line has played so well. Broderick Jones goes down early in this game. Spencer Anderson steps up. Zach Frazier returned. He is a stud at center. I'm so glad we drafted him. And Mason McCormick, a rookie getting touches at guard, has been phenomenal. I can't sing their praises enough. They'll get lost in the shuffle. And I got to give the defense credit. This is the worst game Jaden Daniels has played at the NFL level, man. He completes 50% of his passes in this game. And the big key difference in this game is Pittsburgh got pressure home on Jaden where he was actually affected by the pressure. But the bigger difference was they stonewalled them on early downs. This was Washington facing more 3rd and longs than they have all year long. Washington has been able to get into 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 5s and 3rd and 2s. We were able to shrink their playbook and force them into really bad situations. And that made the difference in this game. We got them behind the sticks, and it forced Washington to try to make big shot plays that are just hard to make, harder to connect on. So good team win. I stay cautiously optimistic about my Steelers, man. I've been impressed, though. They're checking all my boxes this year.
Definitely should be optimistic. We do have somebody in the chat asking what limitations the Steelers offense has. I do think that there's a lot of average on this offense at the end of the
100%,
day, right?
100%.
I mean, the run game is solid. Russ, I think, would struggle to argue as an average starting quarterback. And I know that sounds harsh because he's playing well. I'm just saying, is he the 16th best starting quarterback in football?
There's
There's a
just too
lot of
many.
names you got
Yeah,
to go through. Exactly.
there's too many
Exactly.
guys.
He's playing at a solid level, no question. I'm just saying, I don't think he's actually the 16th best starter. And that means that when you're talking about these other high-end playoff teams, that's a limitation. And the receiving core outside of Pickens, like Freiermuth, solid. Calvin Austin has been solid this year. Mike Williams is okay, but like, again, it's not a high-end receiving group. So that's the thing. I just see a lot of mediocrity offensively still, but mediocrity is a huge improvement. It's leaps and bounds above what we've seen the last few years.
The weaknesses, the pitfalls are a few things. The recipe is if you stop the running game, it's very much like what you saw with the Texans do to the Lions early in this game. When they were able to slow down Montgomery, you force them into a game script where you know that they're going to pass the football because they can't run the ball. Then you send your house at them. And once you can get pressure home on Russ, that's the way to win. But
yeah,
no team's been able to crack them yet. And I hope it stays that way.
True. And they haven't faced joke defenses. I mean, I think the Giants defense is very solid. I think the Jets defense has been underwhelming as of late, but still very talented. The Commanders defense, not so good. So that is the exception there. But I do want to give a quick shout out to the Commanders for just continuing to prove themselves as a legitimate team, even in a loss. Since week 1, when Jaden just didn't look as comfortable as he would become, like literally by the next week, and ever since, they're 7-2 over the last 9. And their 2 losses are super competitive games against the 3-loss Ravens, who I think we view as a legitimate contender, top 5 team in football, and the 2-loss Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think that just continues to cement how legitimate they are, how awesome their offense is. They still put up 27 points in this game. The Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin connection is just special, dude. I mean, my God, they hit on a deep ball every single game. They had just a little RPO slant that went for 54 yards. That was kind of just Terry, and that was good play design. But they're always good for a couple of massive plays in any game. So I really like Washington, dude. I do think that they have their limitation, and that is their defense, but the offense is super legit, and they just show that week after week after week. There isn't a tougher matchup than the Steelers, basically. And it wasn't their best game offensively. They still put up 27 points. They still were in a position where they could have won this game. Shall we talk about the Buffalo Bills game, Logan, from your team to mine, but not about the Buffalo Bills, because they just kind of took care of business in this one. The story of this game is Joe Flacco and the Colts win now move to bring in Uncle Joe, in which they've had a rough 2 weeks since benching Anthony Richardson. Logan, having seen now 2 weeks of this Flacco officially instated as the starter lineup, that the Colts should go back to AR.
Yeah, I think the experiment's done. I was wrong. I got to give you props here, man. You were a little bit more clairvoyant on this one. I was optimistic, that Joe Flacco could have this miracle run. He's got 4 turnovers versus Buffalo. I stopped watching. Did he rack up any more, or did he end at 4?
He ended at 4, and I will say he got the most garbage time touchdown of all garbage time touchdowns. 2 seconds left. He got a touchdown, and he padded his stats on this final drive. Joe Flacco's real stats from this game, because I'm taking away that final bullshit drive, okay? 202 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 turnovers.
And the funny thing about this is, I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, I think Joe could have had like 8 in this game, man. I mean, Joe was...
Definitely could have had 2 more were in defenders' hands.
Yeah, he's giving out Christmas presents, man. He was giving out early gifts, like just handing them over. And it's funny to me too, dude, because the one area that you would think that Joe has an edge over Anthony Richardson is composure. And it's like every time the camera pans to Joe, he has this, just this, like, I don't know, this befuddled look on his face, like he's never played.
I don't know what to make of him. I don't know if he cares at all, dude. I feel like he might just be a mercenary who is just like, all right, I'm going to go out there and play football and get
double
paid.
agent.
I don't think he's a double agent. I just think he's completely ambivalent. I think that he's apathetic out there, bro. He did a hard count. It was the most apathetic hard count I've ever seen. It wouldn't have convinced anybody. So they just always get these close-ups on his face, and I'm like, what is that facial expression? It's this combination of like being confounded and not
Yeah.
caring at all.
That's a good way to put it. I don't know. I mean, what I've taken away from this run from Joe, it was a fluke run last year. It was a lot of fun, but it was a fluke, man. And yeah, it's like a really slow death. It was just watching the Colts just sink further and further into it, man. It was like a really slow car crash. Like you saw it coming from a while away. I think Anthony's learned his lesson. I think more importantly, the Colts season is lost, and I just put him back out there. I mean, at this point, I just don't think you can argue. The most important takeaway is you just can't argue that Joe gives you a better chance to win football games. Because when that argument was on the table, I went out there and I made it. Oh, he's going to protect the ball better. He's going to be more composed. He can make the throws than Anthony Richardson can't, and he's going to protect the football better. More like Joe can make the throws, but he's going to put the ball in harm's way, arguably more than Anthony Richardson. He's completely immobile in the pocket. He's not moving at all. Yeah, I just don't think there's any point anymore, man. And you argued at the time there was very little point when they made the decision. I can see it, Carson. I'm waving the white flag. I think Joe Flacco, hot take, is washed. I think he's washed. I think it's time to stick a fork in Joe, man.
Yeah, Joey Boy's done. And look, I said at the time that I didn't like it, but I did think that Flacco gave them a slightly better chance to win games. My point was just that doesn't outweigh all the other factors, because if you just looked at how the offense had performed, the difference was actually really minimal. And there's always the philosophy with these football teams that, oh, we want to make a playoff push. But what does that look like for the Colts? You know, you sneak in maybe as the shittiest 7 seed known to man, and you get beaten by 40 in the first round, right? Like they were never going to even be competitive in a playoff game. And you're costing your top 5 pick 1 year ago, the youngest starting quarterback in football with the least experience of any starter in football, who was incredibly raw as a prospect, who is unsurprisingly still raw. You're costing him a half season of experience. Like, is all of that worth a slightly better chance to win football games? No, was how I felt. And I liked the move less and less. The more I thought about it, the more we heard about it, that it wasn't just a short-term thing, that it was the intention for the rest of the season. And the more that we've seen Joe Flacco, you're just in a spot where it's like, does he give them that marginally better chance to win? Or is he just going to complete a higher percentage of his passes? Like, I legitimately wonder if that's all it was with Anthony Richardson. If they were like, this is just too ugly on the stat sheet, and we want to preserve our dignity as a football team.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's that one play, dude.
Where he took himself out?
I'm telling you, I think it all stems from that. I don't think they would have pulled the trigger if he hadn't have done that. I think it was like a little timeout, a little punishment. And like, now that we've done that, I don't know, dude, it sucks. I wanted to buy in, man. It's like Andy Dalton, or it's like Ryan Fitzpatrick, man. They come in off the bench. They give you a little juice that one game, and it's fool's gold. You can't date the chick that, let you crack on the first night, man. And that's Joe Flacco. You can't date her, man.
Analogy. I don't know if that analogy makes any sense, but Joe Flacco is a very low-end starting caliber quarterback.
He gave you some of that magic one time, and then you go, all right, I'm going to try to date him. Doesn't work.
The Cleveland Browns didn't, bro. Unfortunately, they went with Deshaun Watson instead. They did not commit. I think that Steichen should have been non-committal, dude. I don't know. I maybe would have been ambiguous when asked about, like, is this a rest of the season thing? I would have said, maybe, we'll see. I don't know. Give yourself an out in case Flacco sucks, and then you're sitting at 4-8, and it's like, fuck it. Let's get AR back out there. Like, let's give him the reps. Let's see what he's got. Because the tools are there. I understand if you are not optimistic about Anthony Richardson. What I don't think you can say is that it makes any sense to treat him as a finished product when we knew that this was going to be a multi-year thing, and he barely even had a rookie season because he only started 4 games due to injuries. And the crazy thing is, this is arguably the better offensive performance for the Colts under Flacco than last week, which was an absolute travesty as well. It just didn't have the turnovers, but they couldn't move the ball at all. And the only good thing about their offense in this game was Jonathan Taylor in the run game. Outside of that garbage time drive for Flacco, like, he was bad. And if I am just viewing this as a Bills fan, like, if I were to tell you, who would I be more scared of as the fan rooting for my defense, I would be more scared of Anthony Richardson. I understand that he might miss some intermediate throws by 5 yards, and I understand that he might complete under 45% of his passes. He's also capable of running over and running past my entire defense. He's also capable of launching the ball 65 yards to Alec Pierce. Joe Flacco is just like a bad, completely immobile, quote unquote, game manager. But we just say that because he doesn't have any athletic tools. He's never approached the game like a game manager. He's approached the game always more like a gunslinger who now is going to try to make throws that he just can't and that he has to force because, I mean, if you bring any pressure, if that pocket collapses around him, you're cooked. I just don't get it, dude. That's not a guy you're going to win games with. And I would walk back on my statement if I were Steichen. I would put Anthony Richardson back out there. If you want to wait until you drop to 4-8, that's fine by me. And honestly, then you actually give Richardson a chance to rack up some wins. They go Jets, Lions. Okay, they can beat the Jets. Then they go Pats, Broncos, Titans, Giants, and Jags. And those are all winnable games. So, like, the crazy thing is maybe they could sneak into this awful, awful last wild card spot, which wouldn't actually mean anything, but I'm sure they would like to do nonetheless. But I don't think you can argue that Flacco gives you a better chance to win by enough margin to not just have Anthony Richardson out there getting reps, getting better.
I agree. And it's not even, I think they can deal with the growing pains. Like I said, man, I just hope Richardson comes back with, a different kind of leadership, a different kind of composure, a different kind of, just more, I guess.
Well, he's learning a lot watching Flacco out there.
Super Bowl winning quarterback, elite, a borderline elite quarterback.
Elite.
Joe Flacco.
Elite Joe Flacco. Kirk Cousins better. Kirk Cousins been better.
Always. Yeah. I just hope that Anthony Richardson took some time to reflect. He can come back and be a better locker room leader and I guess know how to conduct himself a little bit better. I mean, again, dude, I just think you're also like inadvertently just crushing your team's hopes and spirits by leaving Flacco out there to throw you out of games. Like,
I think their perspective was we're doing the opposite, right? Like, I think they were following the same rationale with Bryce and the Panthers, where it's like, we can't win games with this guy. We can't do that to our locker room. Wasn't the case with Anthony Richardson. You were 3-3. Your offense had been as effective as it was with Flacco out there. And now your offense looks worse with Flacco out there. Own up to the fact that you were wrong. Be a man. Don't buy into that whole sunken cost fallacy nonsense, which I guess doesn't really apply here as much, but be able to move off of your wrong positions, Shane Steichen and the Indianapolis Colts, and you will be better for it. We're going to take a quick break, guys, to get some words from our friends at DraftKings. After that, plenty more football to talk about, I promise. The NBA is finally back. A new season means new ways to get into the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who's draining threes from beyond the arc? Who's crashing the boards and grabbing rebounds? Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you make at DraftKings, the home of NBA player props.
ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and place your bet. For first-timers, new DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly.
Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Logan, we saw the return of Christian McCaffrey today for the San Francisco 49ers, and that ended up in a win for them despite some special teams mishaps throughout the day that made it go down to the last second. How did you feel about how CMC looked in his return and about this Niners win overall?
I mean, I think Christian McCaffrey just makes this whole thing go. People may not feel that way about one player with all the injuries and all the other concerns with the Niners this year, right? They're down Javon Hargrave. They're down Brandon Ayuk, right? Like they're missing some key personnel. But I mean, to me, Christian McCaffrey makes the Niners as dangerous as ever, like him just returning. And it closes the margin of gap between whoever else you have in the NFC, between them and a Minnesota, between them and a Detroit. It makes it all the more closer between those teams, where I think I could see the Niners winning a matchup one-on-one. Again, to be clear, I don't know if I'd take San Francisco. Like tomorrow, if they played, them and Minnesota's close. Them and Philly's close. They're both talented teams. I'd take them to beat Philadelphia, I think, with McCaffrey. I probably wouldn't take him to beat
Green
Detroit.
Bay.
Detroit's still my NFC favorite. I'd probably take him to beat Green Bay. Like he just changes everything about this offense. And the numbers aren't going to blow you away. It's 13 carries for 39 yards. It's 6 catches for 68 yards, but it's how he opens up. It's the gravity. He opens up everything else for everybody in this offense. You have to be worried about him. He was the offensive player of the year last year, right? He had one of the greatest running back campaigns ever. Kittle goes for three catches, 57 yards, and a TD. Juwan Jennings goes for 7 and 93. Debo's open all day. Ricky Pearsall's open all day. Purdy goes for over 350 yards in this game. Like, he makes everybody on offense's life easier. And like you said, dude, I mean, if Jake Moody clocked into work today, like, they decimate Tampa Bay. He misses a 49-yarder, a 50-yarder, and a 44-yarder, and I empathize with the guy a little bit. He's coming off of an injury, right? It's his first game back. But, yeah, it legitimizes the Niners as a real deal contender if McCaffrey is out there. He makes all the difference in the world to me. If he's not out there, I don't take the Niners serious. If he is available, I do take the Niners serious. I could see them getting to another Super Bowl if McCaffrey's available. I'm not selling Niners stock. I mean, we talk about these teams' identities. The Chiefs' identity is they win ugly and they win tight games and they win no matter what. The Lions' identity now is that they're a complete football team. And not only can they decimate you offensively, they can win defensive football games. Now, what has the Niners' identity been? Hey, if our skill guys are out there, we throw a mean freaking punch and we can battle with the best of them. So, yeah, I'm ready to buy back all the Niners stock, man. I'm wholeheartedly there with this team. I think they're still a Super Bowl contender. The record may not reflect it. McCaffrey's back. As long as McCaffrey is out there, this team is very dangerous.
I think that I've held on to a lot of my Niners stock. I mean, I know there's been a lot of outright panic. I'm not as high on them as I was preseason for sure, but I don't think I've ever dropped them out of my top 10 of my power rankings. I know that I haven't dropped them that far. I do think when you're holding up against the Lions are better on both sides of the ball to me by a pretty decent bit, but I guess I couldn't rule out the Niners in a single game. Like, this offense can explode, man. And the big thing to me with CMC has always been what he opens up as a receiver, right? Like, the Niners are able to replicate a good bit of his rushing production. You get Garendo back there. Obviously, Jordan Mason has been really, really good this year. That's what they do. They find running backs at value who can produce on the ground, but there's no other pass catching running back in football like Christian McCaffrey. And that is so valuable as a release valve for this offense, as a check down option for Purdy. The big chunk play in this game where he does his man, then has to track this moon ball that Purdy threw up, and he does so perfectly. Like, that's just special stuff from a running back. And it completely adds another dimension to this offense, which even without Ayuk, dude, like, is still loaded. Their receiving core is still excellent, dude. Ricky Pearsall, ASU legend, really good football player. He has a monster touchdown today. Juwan Jennings is a stud. And then you have Kittle and Debo and CMC. That's a really, really good receiving core. And Purdy was really good today, too. He was really effective work in the middle of the field. He had a couple of impressive throws under some duress. So I've never panicked about the Niners. The injuries have been tough. They've had just some blown games that have hurt them in the win-loss column, but they're going to win this division. They're going to be a team you don't want to see come playoffs. This is what we've said the entire season. And I know that they only won by a field goal and they only put up 23 points in this game, but they dominated. They doubled Tampa Bay in yardage. They missed 3 field goals in this game. Jake Moody did. I do think the special team struggles for San Francisco are so bad that we can't necessarily just write them off. I mean, there are 3 phases of a football game, Logan. And in terms of offense, The Niners are great. They're second in total yards per game this year. That's even without Christian McCaffrey. They're allowing under 304 yards per game. So that's a plus 108 differential in terms of yardage, but they're just 5-4. And when you look at their losses, what happened in the Rams game, Logan? Long punt return they let up to set up the go-ahead score. What happened in the Cardinals game? Well, to be fair, that was kind of fluky because Moody got hurt in that game, but they couldn't kick field goals. And if they had been able to just kick field goals, they would have won that game. So I just think that's something that's at least worth monitoring. This was a special teams disaster. I do think there's merit to the idea that Moody had a really bad game because he was just coming off of his injury, but we need to see improvement there. That's kind of the one thing with the Niners that does concern me, that and injuries, although Dre Greenlaw should be getting back out there soon, but they're really been really good. They lost a couple tough games. Their record hasn't been reflective of how good they are. And I think that they're showing that. And I think they're going to continue to show that.
What do you think about Debo shoving the long snapper?
That was interesting, dude. They didn't show it on the broadcast, but I heard somebody say that the long snapper shoved Moody first. So Debo was standing up for him. If that's the case, then I fuck with it. If that's not the case, if he's just like, bro, stop being so ass, then I don't really fuck with it.
Well said. Well said. Dude, honestly, terrific analysis.
That's my analysis.
No, but you're right. The muffed punt too that leads to the Tampa Bay touchdown. Yeah, it was a lot in today's game on along with the field goals. If Moody keeps struggling, I think the Niners have the answer already on their practice squad. They've still got Matthew Wright, who used to kick for the Steelers. It was a really good kicker when he stepped in for Chris Boswell when Boswell was injured. So I wouldn't be afraid to call the pivot, man. There was a lot of bad kicking performances today, man. Koo too. It was
I know.
Not
Young
kicker's
Hui disaster class.
Yeah.
Young Hui disaster class. He cost the Falcons that game 100%. Sad. That and, of course, the interim head coach magic working in favor of the Saints. Let's talk about another team in the NFC West, Logan. The Arizona Cardinals pick up a big old win today. They are hot, hot, hot. That is 5 straight wins for the Cardinals to improve to 6-4, and they are currently leading the NFC West. Of course, the team on, Logan, none other than the New York Jets. Who do you think this game said more about? Sorry, that's not 5 straight for the Cardinals. That's 5 out of 6.
True. I've made this spiel, I think 3 times this year, so I'm going to get it out of the way for the final time. The Jets aren't serious. This told me way more about the Jets. And I flirted with this team being over the Commanders. I flirted with this team being top 13. And this week told me a lot about 3 teams to me.
Okay.
The Jets, the Bears, and the Colts. All 3 of them should not come close to my top 10 because I'm trying to figure out in this crowded class of contenders, where do the Jets go? Where do the Bears go? Where do the Colts go? The Commanders, the Cardinals, the Bucks, the Rams, Seahawks, right? All these teams. The Jets aren't serious. The Bears aren't serious. And the Colts aren't serious. Like, the Jets are up 24-6 at the end of the Cardinals are up, on the Jets 24-6 at the end of this first half. And they lose 31-6. They don't muster a point in the second half. And the defense is an alarming aspect of this team. They allow 17 straight completions to Kyler Murray. That breaks the old franchise record held by Carson Palmer. He goes for 22 of 24 with 266 yards in this game, 2 incompletions. And they get trampled in the run game. They allow nearly 150 yards and 3 TDs on the ground. When you look at the other side of the football, they have the 8th lowest scoring offense and the 10th lowest yards per play of any offense in the NFL. They're not serious. They're just not. I'm ready to write them off. I think they're a bottom 10, maybe not bottom 10. They're a bottom 20 team in the league. And what I mean by that is like 20th and below.
20th
so they're
or lower, sure.
Exactly. So they're like a bottom 12 to 13 team in the league. They're just not serious, man. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have enough. And there's some really bad moments like Devontae Adams drops a TD in this game. They're not like completely off, but Rodgers just doesn't have enough juice. No. And I know we've had this, but like he doesn't have enough juice to be what this team needs. This team needs a top 5 quarterback on the planet, and expecting that kind of play out of Aaron Rodgers. And I'm not sorry to be saying this. Woody Johnson's an idiot and shouldn't have let Robert Saleh go. I also think a
Yep.
component of this team slowly unraveling. I think
Mhm.
Saleh was a big part of the glue holding this team together. And now that he's gone, you are just seeing them come apart at the seams week after week.
I agree.
The defense is coming apart. The offense is falling apart. This is just a train wreck. The Jets season's done, man. And I think the Cardinals are good. I've been impressed with the Cardinals. The
Yeah.
defense has steadily gotten better. They've been able to run the ball on everybody. Kyler's looked really good. The Cardinals are a good football team. The Jets are not. The Jets are jokes.
The Jets are now 1-4 in the biggest game of their season, which has been every week for the last 5 weeks. Not great under pressure. I think you're right about the Salah thing. I think that almost everybody agreed that that was a terrible decision. It's kind of rare to have that sort of universal agreement on something like that, or at least almost everybody who I saw was in agreement that he was very clearly not the problem. And their defense has gotten way worse since firing him. They were letting up just 17 points per game with him this season after being the best defense in football probably last year. Since firing him, 26 points per game allowed. And they have faced some better offenses in that stretch, but they have not looked like the defense that we've always known in New York. And they just got absolutely gashed in every which way today. But it was also an atrocious offensive performance. You put up 207 yards and 6 points versus a defense that sure has been improving, but entered today ranked dead last in yards allowed per drive and 28th in points allowed per drive. Like, the Cardinals defense is a bad unit. It's been a bad unit all year. And I thought they played well today. I thought they were good in coverage. I thought they got some timely pressure, but this is a defense that has struggled. You got nothing against them. And they just felt out of sync. Dude, Devontae had 31 yards on 13 targets. I mean, just several miscues. You mentioned the drop ball, just not being on time, not being in the same frame of mind as Aaron Rodgers, which is just a really stark contrast to last week when it finally looked like things were clicking. And this week they just look completely disjointed. When your defense isn't elite, if you're the Jets, you don't have any real ceiling, right? The goal for this offense was always just to be solid, to be a solid offense and to ride that defense. And the defense isn't doing its job. So I think this told us more about the Jets. I also do think that this said something about Arizona, though. I think that their offense is borderline elite. I think it's one of the most balanced in football. They are a dominant rushing attack with both Kyler and James Conner. I don't think there's a running back outside of Derrick Henry who is harder to bring down in football than James Conner. He just bounces off tackles. They're 7th in rushing yards per game. They're 2nd in rushing yards per attempt. And Kyler is more under control than we've ever seen him. I've been so impressed with him all year. I think he's probably a top 10 quarterback. We've been saying that basically throughout the year, but the dual threat aspect and then the efficiency as a passer, he's not always the most consistent week to week, but this is an offense that doesn't need him to do heroics in the way that they have in years past because of how great the run game is, because of a more solid receiving core top to bottom. Question with them is the defense, has always been the defense. They're showing some improvement. I'm still not bought in on that side of the ball. That's why I do still view the Niners as a clear favorite to win this division. But I think Arizona is awesome offensively, and I do think that they're an above average football team. And they're in the playoff mix. It's just really hard in the NFC. The wild card race is really good. At the top of that wild card race, Logan, we have the Minnesota Vikings, who won today, and they improved to 7-2. But it was not a pretty win over the Jacksonville Jaguars without Trevor Lawrence. That means we got the McCorkle Jones show out there, and it was about what you would expect. And a big reason that this game was so close was we had a bit of a Sam Darnold disaster class. Are you worried about Darnold's performance and what that means for Minnesota, Logan?
I mean, it's been the one thing holding me back about crowning this team. I know that everybody wanted to do it, and that's why early on in the season, are you guys happy now? Because, I finally moved him up after the Sunday Night Football game against the Colts, and everybody's like, oh, this is the game where you're moving him up. And then I said, hey, hold up. It's Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's the reason the whole season why I've been hesitant to move him up. I was waiting on this game. And so I guess the pertinent question is, does this eliminate – is Sam Darnold so much of an anchor that he eliminates the Vikings from being legitimate contenders to me? No. The Vikings are a very good football team with a really good formula. The defense is awesome. They were again today. They've been probably the best defense in the NFL this season. I know the Chiefs are great. I love the Chiefs. I think the Vikings have probably been the best. When you add everything, the scheme, the pressure that they put on the quarterback, the personnel, and then how great they've been at forcing turnovers, like this is a really good deep secondary with a lot of guys I like. I really like the linebackers. The pressure's great, and they're really well coached. So I still love the defense. And then we go back to the offense. They're still really talented. Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor even, TJ Hawkinson's back. Sam Darnold's the one guy that I'm worried about. Again, that's the reason why I couldn't do it, why I couldn't say, oh, the Vikings are my Super Bowl favorite in week 3. He's the final component in determining whether they're a championship contender or not. And this game is a complete wire-to-wire blowout if Sam Darnold just doesn't turn the ball over. Like Carson, even if they come away with field goals in all of those turnovers, it's a convincing win.
Yeah.
So I still think they're the number 2 team in the NFC to me, behind Detroit. Again, best defense in the NFL. Darnold makes the gap closer, right? The gap is closer, I think, to me, between San Francisco and Philadelphia. They're coming in hot, but it's the Bozo gene. They got it. Jared Goff's got it too. We saw it tonight. Jared Goff, in a way, kind of bailed Sam Darnold out a little bit, Carson, So Sam Darnold scares me. I'm not going to act like he doesn't. He scares me probably more than any other quarterback in the NFC playoff field.
Yeah.
I'll go to even more than Brock, even more than Jalen Hurts, even more than Jared Goff. Sam Darnold scares the bejesus out of me. But this team is great. And I've seen Sam Darnold play great football games. Tonight wasn't one of them. I'm not ready to jump ship, though. Yes, he's the biggest variable in this football team. Jared Goff is still the biggest variable of the Detroit Lions. And Sam Darnold scares me more than any quarterback in the NFC that's in the playoff picture. But I still think the Vikings are my number 2 team in the NFC.
I agree. I would still have them there, but they're dropping. They're dropping a little bit week after week in my eyes because I've been super high on the Vikings because they're such a complete football team. And Darnold was just playing well enough, right? I expected some disaster classes before the year, but he mostly held off. And now we've seen the last couple weeks. Last week, he played better. He made some positive plays to offset the negative plays, but this 6 turnovers in the last 2 weeks now, Logan, from Sam Darnold. And this one was just terrible. First pick wasn't really on him. It was a very contested route. It was off Jettis's hands. Maybe he shouldn't have thrown that, but that wasn't like an oh god interception.
Yeah.
The next 2 were, though. I mean, the first red zone pick was horrible, way off target. Again, going at Jefferson. The second red zone pick, easily undercut, again targeting Jefferson. When you throw 3 picks targeting the same guy, even if he's the best receiver on the planet, I think that tells you that you're forcing the ball to said guy a little bit. So I am concerned about Darnold. I like so much about this team, and I really don't think Darnold has to be great for the Vikings to win a playoff game or 2 because of how good they are defensively, because of the havoc they can wreak on that end with their pressure, because of how well they run the ball, because of how stacked their receiving core is. Darnold just has to be solid, which is what he's been for most of the year. But this is a pretty major red flag now. And when I compare them, not within the scope of the NFC, but when I compare them to the teams I had right behind them in my power rankings, the Bills and then the Ravens have a red flag in their defense. But my philosophy is normally, right, if you have the better defense, you have the better quarterback, I'm going to bet on that team. The quarterback factor is a big one. You can't overlook it.
That's
why
Darnold
Darnold is playing at a concerning enough level where it's like, if I were to see them in a theoretical Super Bowl matchup, okay, if we could have interconference playoff games before that, maybe against the Bills or the Ravens, could I pick the Minnesota Vikings? And a few weeks ago, I would have said, yes, I think I can. And now that we've seen the bad side with Sam Darnold come to the surface, which shouldn't be a shock. It's not a shock. It's just enough of a red flag compared to what we had seen to where I'd move them down a little bit. Like you said, I still think they're the second best team in the NFC, but the gap between them and Detroit is growing to me. I do think Detroit is pretty clearly a better football team than them. And the biggest reason, the only reason really, is Darnold. Because, Jesus, dude, I mean, the Jaguars with Mac Jones, that's the worst team in football. So you don't get any credit for gutting out a 12-7
Well,
win,
and
right? It's not like the Lions beating the
uh-huh.
Texans on the
And
road in Sunday Night Football.
they better be thankful that Mac Jones gifted them 2 back, because that kept
Yeah, he's
them.
Mac.
You knew it was going to happen, but yeah, and that's why I had the Vikings below Buffalo and Baltimore this entire time, and I only recently did this. I would still have Buffalo below Minnesota, and the only reason I say that,
Buffalo's better than Baltimore, my friend.
you can hold on to that. Baltimore beat you like a scalded dog.
Bad
Carson.
matchup.
Come on,
Bad
man.
matchup.
How does that not? Can we take a timeout for a second? How does that not compute to you? I'm like,
Hold
seriously.
on. Don't be condescending, Logan. I'm sorry. You know about matchups in sports as much as anybody else. Beating a
but it's
team
like
doesn't mean you're better than
the
the team.
Ravens
The
beat y'all
Bills
like a
have a
drum.
bad run defense. The Ravens are maybe the best rushing attack we've ever seen. You know what the Bills have done to bad football teams? Beating their asses week after week. You know what the Ravens have done? They lost to the Raiders. They lost to the Browns. Their defense is bad, bro. Their secondary is ass. The Bills don't have a red flag like that. So
I
listen,
disagree.
if they were to face each other head to head,
y'all's run defense is as bad as the Ravens' pass defense.
No, it's not. It's not. It was really bad against the Ravens. We also didn't have Taron Johnson, Terrell Bernard, or Matt Milano, 3 of our most important defensive players and our most important run defenders.
I think there's teams that can run the ball in the AFC, and
it's a concern.
Run into them,
but nobody has made the Bills' run defense look like a problem, except for the Ravens. I think it is a problem because some
Jonathan
of these teams,
Taylor
right, like
gassed y'all today too. I mean, that's all
didn't matter because the Bills are way better. But everybody is gashing the Ravens through the air. Logan, they're the worst pass defense in football.
Yeah.
You're just overlooking that. You've had them as your number 2 team in football. They've got a big old red flag staring you right in the face, man.
And Lamar and Derrick Henry can put up points. Look, man.
So can Josh Allen with a healthy receiving core, or even without a healthy receiving core.
So how come y'all didn't gash the Ravens through the air like everybody's been doing this year?
Okay, because we did have a shorthanded receiving core.
I'm just saying,
and you know what happened in that game. That game was fucked because we had 4th and shorts where we didn't go for it in a cowardly way and just couldn't get stops. And the game was out of control at that point. I mean, obviously the Ravens destroyed the Bills. If you think they're better, that's fine. I don't. I think that they're a really bad matchup for the Bills. I don't think they're a better overall football team.
Oh, that's what I'm saying is there's nuance to this, and sometimes the quarterback and the offense is going to outweigh those benefits. The Bills are where I draw the line with the Vikings. The Vikings defense is so overwhelmingly dominant that they outweigh the Bills, but they don't outweigh the Ravens to me because they have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and you can talk about the rest of the roster. Everything else goes out. I throw the book out of the window when Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry come into the equation. So that's my argument. And I don't know, man. I don't think the Bills team is as good as you do. I'll say that. I don't.
I think they're really good, man.
I'm cooling on the defense a little bit. Not like I think that they're bad. I just don't think that they're great.
I mean, the run defense is a concern. I get that. I think the corners are ridiculous. And all I'm saying is Matt Milano's the best player on the defense. It's not a question. He hasn't seen the field yet this year. So I just wouldn't underestimate the difference that he makes for that defense. I think the Bills defense is really good. I mean, if I were to say which side of the football am I more concerned about, it's definitely the defense. I know the offense is going to be amazing every single week, especially when the receivers are healthy. They put up 30 points in this game. That's without Amari Cooper. That's without Keon Coleman. That's without Dalton Kincaid for more than half of the game. They're a top 5 offense this year. Amari Cooper's played like probably 20-something snaps for the football team, right? So they're going to be dominant on that end. I just think the defense is better than the Ravens by a decent margin. I don't think it's a great defense. I think it's a good defense. I don't think as talented as the Ravens defense is on paper that they've shown us that they're even a good defense, because week after week this is happening.
The run defense is still like, the run defense is very good. It is literally just the 4 dudes in the secondary. It's mostly Nate Wiggins, Marlon Humphrey, and now it's exacerbated by the fact that Kyle Hamilton's injured. And
I know, but Logan, you're saying that like it's not a massive problem. They're 26th in points allowed per drive. They couldn't stop the Raiders on 4 straight drives. In that football game, the Raiders, they couldn't stop Jameis Winston in the Cleveland Browns. That's a problem.
And you guys have gotten gashed on the ground.
By the Ravens, by the best rushing attack ever, sure.
It's
but
like,
not by that many other teams.
It could come back to bite them, but it's like y'all's run defense could come back to bite y'all. I'm just saying, in a one-game format, Lamar and Derrick Henry trump a lot of other stuff. They trump entire teams to me. And it's not the entire defense to me with Baltimore. I like Baltimore's front seven a lot. I do think they're missing something now that we have Patrick Queen. Patrick Queen's a huge difference maker. Like, their defense is way worse than last year. The secondary is among the worst in the NFL. I don't dispute any of that. I still like the front seven. I still like the run defense. And again, man, the thing I'm going to go to bat for is Lamar and Derrick Henry. They have been two of the best offensive players in football this year.
There's no questioning that. I mean, the Ravens are an amazing offense. We've seen that week after week. If you want, we can talk about Thursday Night Football now, because that was another amazing offensive showing from the Ravens and another horrible defensive showing. I just think that's the story of the team. I still think they're a top 5 team in football. I think it's a wildly impressive Lamar game on Thursday Night Football. I think it's an incredible Lamar season. I said that I think he's midseason MVP. You took Josh Allen. I said I think that Lamar's production is overwhelming. I think that he has been better than Josh this regular season. I mean, he's on pace for a historic year, dude. Like 4,500 passing yards, 40 plus touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 950 rushing yards. It's absurd. And what is significant about this win is that Baltimore doesn't play from behind almost ever, right? I mean, they're just so good at establishing their game script, getting ahead with the run game, and then just controlling the football game end to end. And historically, they haven't played from behind very well. But Lamar is just slinging this shit around the field like never before. I mean, I think he's so improved as a passer. I thought he was improved as a passer last year. I think he's taken it up another level this year. And nobody's playing the position better than him right now. And honestly, if you told me that he's the guy you want most for the playoffs this year, I would say, okay. I wouldn't agree. I would still take Mahomes and Josh, but I couldn't be mad at that take because Lamar is just such an overwhelming duo threat and is throwing the ball so well right now and is on pace to have one of the greatest quarterback seasons ever. So, like, that's the good news for Baltimore. There's no question that this offense is amazing and is the best they've ever had. It's just also the worst defense that they've had. And you let Jamar Chase go for 265 yards and 3 touchdowns on you, and you just got gashed the entire game. They're dead last in total passing yards allowed. They're 28th in passing yards allowed per attempt. So that's the thing with the Ravens. I want to be clear. I still think that they're a top 5 team in football. But if you're comparing them to the Chiefs, right, who you know are going to have an elite defense, and then they still have Patrick Mahomes,
I mean,
that's a concern for me. And the Bills have a good defense. We saw them lose to the Chiefs, like they always do.
You're funny, man. You're
That's what happened.
They lost on the difference. So the Chiefs beating the Ravens matter, but the Ravens beating the shit out of the Bills doesn't matter. I just don't.
Both matter. They all matter.
The Ravens lost matters on the final play of a game that Isaiah likely could have made it, send it into OT.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, all right, man. I think
played a close game against the Chiefs.
I think Chiefs Ravens
are a better football team.
I think Chiefs Ravens is going to be a battle where I wouldn't be able to choose a team convincingly. Like, I think that's going to be a war. And I've come around
about their defense than you are.
I agree with you. I think Lamar is the MVP at this point. I've come around. Also, Josh throwing 2 horrible interceptions in this game also comes into play, because my argument for Lamar, the crux of it was he gets to play with the Offensive Player of the Year. Josh has been playing great football, taking care of it well. Josh turns the ball over really ugly twice today, and Derrick Henry has basically nothing to do with the reason why the Bengals lost this game. It was the Lamar Jackson show the entire way through. And his updated pace numbers, 44 total touchdowns, 4,500 passing yards, 915 rushing yards to 10 turnovers. It is arguably one of the 5 greatest seasons. If he completes this stretch, it's one of the 5 greatest seasons we've seen from a quarterback ever. It's Mahomes' 50 TD season. It's Peyton's 50 TD season. It's Brady's 50 TD season. And it's this one. And after that, I don't know. I guess we're getting into Peyton's
Marino.
48 or 49 or Marino or a Breeze
84.
year or something like that, like something
Rodgers,
ridiculous.
2011. There has to be
True.
a Rodgers season.
A Rodgers year. But Lamar is in that pantheon. And if he stays at this, Lamar would be my MVP, just 1 week removed. But their secondary is suspect, and it's just uncharacteristic. I mean, it's not only it's routine shot plays and defensive breakdowns that are uncharacteristic, but it's also the penalties. I have never seen a Ravens defense this undisciplined in all my years. I have such respect for the Ravens. And also, people were saying that my Steelers bias was showing with Lamar Jackson not being my MVP. First of all, guys, Lamar is one of my 5 favorite players to watch. I love watching Lamar. It's
incredible.
Don't get me wrong. The 3 guys above him, TJ Watt's my favorite player to watch in the league. My next favorite is Josh Allen. My next favorite is Patrick Mahomes. And then it's Lamar. But I love watching Lamar, dude. He is a human highlight reel. Like, he's unreal every single week. But the Kyle Hamilton injury is serious. And if he's out for an extended period of time, or if he's not there for the playoffs, I don't know how I could pick this team to go to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. It is that big of a Achilles. It's jokes, man. Jamar is cooking them. And it's, again, it's their track record. It is a proven, this is now over half of a season where they have been completely clueless defending the pass. So the Ravens aren't just a shoe-in. And a year ago, this offense with the defense from a year ago is my pick to win the Super Bowl. They would be my number 1 team in the NFL right now, but they're just not up to standard, man. And so I don't want to act like it's not I still consider the Ravens to be a real contender, but they do have an Achilles heel, and it is exposable by a lot of teams in the playoff field. Hell, man, if the Bengals snuck into the playoffs, say hypothetically the Ravens, it's not going to be able to happen because the Ravens would have to get the 2 seed. And then the Bengals would have to get the 7 seed, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think the Ravens would want to see the Bengals again in the playoffs. That's a really exploitable matchup. The Ravens are very susceptible to being upset in a way that some of these other teams aren't. But I'm not ready to count them out, but it is still something to monitor, man. I have less confidence in the Ravens than I did at the beginning of the year. I thought they'd be able to run away and be a dominant team on both sides. I had them winning 14 games, I think, man. This isn't that team, but I still think they're a real contender.
I think they're a real contender too. I just think they have a red flag. It's a very concerning red flag. The reason they're still a contender is they are overwhelming offensively, arguably the best offense in football, with, for me right now, the MVP and offensive player of the year. That's crazy, but I just don't think you can overlook week after week struggles. And the Kyle Hamilton injury is not serious, apparently, so that's good. But, bro, we've seen them fully healthy in the secondary, and they've still been bad. So it's crazy. You are absolutely right. Last year's defense, bro, that was the number 1 scoring defense in football. And they have lost some talent from that group, but they haven't lost enough talent to take this sort of step back on the defensive end. They're really, really good, but I am concerned about that one aspect. Logan, speaking of concern, we talked about Darnold's performance, rough quarterback showing on the day. We also had a rough quarterback showing from Caleb Williams in the battle of the rookies, him versus Drake May, Bears versus Pats. Chicago puts up 3 points. Were you concerned by Caleb's performance in this one?
Yeah, I'm not so concerned about Caleb individually, but I am worried about the Bears completely ruining him. And you think about the Bears' track record with quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky was never going to work because Mitch Trubisky always sucked, right? And they ended up maximizing him with Matt Nagy. He makes a Pro Bowl. They win, double-digit games. It's on the back of the defense. But what did they do with him? They kept the old regime there, and they bled it over into the new era. It was John Fox, and then it was Matt Nagy his second year. Justin Fields, they do the same thing. Let's give Nagy another year. They go Matt Nagy and Eberflus. Both of these guys had 2 head coaches and 2 offensive coordinators in 2 years, and they're going to do the exact same thing with Caleb Williams this year when they fire the dumbasses Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron. Whoever Chicago is going to hire, they're going to be better. But again, it's just organizational.
What if they aren't, though? What if they aren't?
Oh, my
God.
What if they find the worst guys that you could hire? Don't even, Carson. I can't.
What if they call up Matt Canada and they say, this is your job. We love you for the job.
Dude, that's like the holy trinity, bro. They could bring Matt Nagy back. They'd have Matt Eberflus, and they could have
Let's
Matt
get
Canada.
Matt Canada.
Matt
And let's
Patricia.
get Matt Patricia. That's exactly what I was going to say. The Mats.
Oh my God, dude. I wouldn't put it past them. I would not put it past them. But okay. Well, thanks, Carson. You've given me another negative dystopian Bears timeline. So I guess one timeline is they run it back with Eberflus and Waldron. It's the exact same dumpster fire that it is this year. Or they fire both of those guys. And again, you just take a year of development from Caleb where he has to get acclimated to a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, and a new offensive system. They have to go. I'm done with it, man. Eberflus and Waldron do not know what's going on. Waldron was a Geno Smith merchant. Eberflus has never had it going on.
No.
Carson, the Bears had more 3-and-outs than points today.
Hell yeah, brother.
They scored 3 total points. They went 1 of 14 on third downs. They averaged 2.4 yards per play. They had 1.8 yards per pass, and they allowed 9 sacks. Caleb Williams goes 16 of 30, 120 passing yards with 15 rushing yards. And right now, they're the number 31 ranked third down offense and the number 31 ranked offense in yards per play, only to Cleveland. When you're in conversation with the Cleveland Browns offense, things are pretty bad.
Get out of there.
And they're the number 23 ranked scoring offense. So the offensive line sucks. There's bad play calling, zero creativity. This is a vanilla offense. Like, I'm just worried about the Bears ruining Caleb and making him spoiled goods. Because they're asking Caleb to be their savior right now, man. They can't run the ball convincingly. They can't protect him up front. I'm not worried about Caleb, dude. I think Caleb's got all the talent in the world to be successful, and he shows it every week, in my opinion. The Bears just have no idea what's going on. Are you worried about the Bears ruining him? Like, I'm just worried that the organizational dysfunction could crush him.
I'm not really. I believe in Caleb's talent that much. I mean, it's definitely been a disappointing rookie year compared to my expectations, but we've seen the ability, right? We've seen the games, we've seen the halves where they've put it together. It's a dysfunctional offense, and this was a bad performance from the Bears offense. It was horrible. From Caleb individually, it was bad. Honestly, though, I wouldn't say it's that concerning for him individually. The thing that does stand out, there's a couple areas in which Caleb had to be better in this game. Accuracy all year, man, has not been as good as I thought and hoped, right? We've seen that on some deep balls all year, but he missed a couple throws in this game. You just can't. Third and short, DJ was breaking out and just missed him by a couple yards. 3rd and 14, this was a crazy one. Just a little check down to Roschon Johnson. And I think he was trying to get a little arm angle around a defensive lineman who he thought might like bat down the ball. But I mean, running back standing right in front of him 4 or 5 yards out, and he misses him by a couple yards. He missed Kmet in the flat on a little bootleg. Like, some of these throws that are easy completions that he's not making, that I don't like. But I mean, it's the same story we've talked about all year. The play calling's bad, and the line is brutal. Caleb was sacked 9 times in this game. Part of that is on him. A lot of that is on the offensive line. I do think he has to be better at identifying the blitz. This is something that we talked about with Bo, right? I mean, 3rd and long, especially, they're just dialing up the blitz consistently, and that ball's not out quick enough. The ball has to get out quickly, and I think that if you're Shane Waldron, you have to have a designed little check down there that he can immediately, like just a quick slant, right? Something where he can quickly get the ball out. There wasn't a lot of that, but also, Caleb, I get that you're a rookie. You still should be able to identify at the line of scrimmage and change things up, right? So that you have that option. That does concern me. Play calling, again, just kind of screwed him, though. I mean, like, there's some spots where they get him rolling out, and you're like, okay, I like that, right? But then everything's covered, and so then the play just dies because now you're limited to half the field. There's some spots where I think I want to see him hang a little tighter in the pocket, right? Maybe he's bailing a little bit quickly, but also he's getting pressured damn near every snap when he is in the pocket. He definitely wasn't good in this game. I didn't think it was catastrophic on his part, though. I thought it was an untenable situation for quarterback play, and I thought the Patriots defense was good. So when you ask me if I'm worried about them ruining him, they're definitely not putting him in a position to succeed right now. I think that is beyond argument. I guess I'm more optimistic though that like you can't be this dysfunctional. And I know that the Bears would maybe push back and say, yes, we can. But I do think the guy is so talented and the receiving core is there. Put
Yeah,
a competent offensive line and a
please,
competent play caller.
please,
And I think this thing
please.
goes zoom, man. I
Preach,
think it goes
dude.
vroom, vroom.
Preach.
So I'm still optimistic. I'm not worried long term, but it's ugly right now. It's ugly. And the Bears are putting him in terrible positions. And that's why Eberflus has to be gone. And Waldron has to be gone, and they'll start with a blank slate next year, and we'll see how things look from there.
I 100% agree. And dude, I think honestly, I like watching Caleb work from single back too. I just think I like him under center. Like I think Caleb, the accuracy thing needs to work, but I think they'd be doing him some favors by running him under center. I just want to see more play action. I want to see him, because that's what stuff worked. You know, when they played the Colts, like that's what showed up on tape is that you're getting guys open behind linebackers. You're manipulating the defense.
Totally.
And
Bro, every game that their offense has played well, they've gotten the run going. And every game that their offense has sucked, they've been incapable of running the ball.
And it just comes out as like lazy. And then look, Waldron, you putting Caleb in shotgun, 20 to 30 snaps when the running game is, you're just asking defenders to tee off on your quarterback. And also, I felt like this all year. I think the offensive line is bad. I also think the offensive line is poorly coached. They routinely look like clueless on whose responsibility is what, who's supposed to be doing. And again, what does that say to me? It reflects all on the coaching staff. It doesn't reflect on Caleb at all. This says to me that these guys aren't prepared. And again, that's on Waldron and Eberflus. And I just want to see them with guys that know what they're doing. Like Arthur Smith. I know people get on Arthur Smith, dude. The Steelers look like they know what they're doing. They look well coached. This is your responsibility on this play. This is what you're doing, and the players are executing. There's some sort of a disconnect there in Chicago. And honestly, dude, every week I ask the question, why don't they just bite the bullet? Like if we're going to restart it, do you think it's where do you come down on that? Do you think it would be worthwhile exploring coaching change midseason
execution,
or or do you think that would add more like fuel to the fire?
We talked about this a little last week. I think that it's enough of a mixed bag to where I'm not adamantly pro fire Eberflus now, even though I think he sucks and has to be fired at the end of this year, just because like it's already such an unstable situation. Do you want to make that worse for Caleb? And here's the thing, man, there's no saving the season at this point, right? I mean, when you were 4-2, okay, maybe there's a window to being a scrappy playoff team, but you blow the game to the Commanders because of coaching, because of the Hail Mary, and because of the silly handoff to your backup center on the one. You look bad against the Cardinals. You look bad against the Patriots. Now, Logan, are you ready for this? Here's your schedule. Packers, Vikings, at Lions, at Niners, at Vikings, Lions, Seahawks, at Packers. They might not win a game. I mean, I think if they finish 6-11, that's a fine outcome for them. So then you have the easiest Shane, Matt, get the hell out of here conversation ever. And you don't potentially open the door for people to be like, wait, see, Eberflus wasn't the problem. Look at the Bears. They're a disaster without him. When in reality, he fumbled their easy stretch of the schedule. And then they were always going to get hit hard in their hard stretch of the schedule. So I don't think they have to do it. Philosophically, organizationally, it's not something they've done. I don't think you should be tied to that. But as long as they do it at the end of this year, I'm good. That's all that matters to me.
Amen, brother.
Anything else you want to touch on from any of these games, Logan?
I mean, I guess
the
only thing we didn't touch on real quick, just because I saw this pop, is just like the 2-point conversion dilemma, from like Cincy, Baltimore. And the only thing I'll say on that is I am not an analytics person. Let me rephrase that. Like I like the context that analytics can provide us just statistically. I'm fascinated by those numbers, right? And the analytics are always going to tell you, or a lot of times in this situation, like I even understand why Cincinnati went for, you could lay an argument on me that would make me go, it's not a bad idea. You're on the road. Neither offense has been able to be stopped, right? If you go into overtime and you don't get the football, you're likely going to lose. It's the same argument that you could make for Tampa Bay against Kansas City, right? You're up against Kansas City. If you don't touch the ball in overtime, you're probably going to lose. I'm always a take the points guy. And I'm an old school football coach mindset. I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers football mindset. And the reason I say that is my theory is always, if we play more football, that benefits my team because we're better. My football team is better than yours. And anytime we are on the football field, that means that if we're playing and it's an even, it's an even game, that leans in my favor. Like, I always think about the Steelers-Seahawks game from a couple of years ago where the Steelers have the ball with 30 seconds left near midfield. We punt the ball to like the 13 in overtime. TJ Watt forces a fumble immediately. And I get that's a really specific game script. We're asking our defense to win us a football game. But I trust my team top to bottom that I'm okay with going to overtime. I think we can win defensively. I think we can win offensively. I think we can win either way. And that's why I'm always in favor of playing extra football.
But not everybody's team is better than the other team. Like, this was the thing with the Raiders-Chiefs conversation we had. You're the underdog on the road, and you have an opportunity, right? You're on the goal line.
You're
You got to go there. No, I'm talking about the Raiders-Chiefs game when the Raiders had the takeaway, remember? And they were on the 3, and they were down 17-13.
Yes.
You said take the points. I say you have to go for the touchdown there. What value do you have in going down 1 when you're the worst football team? Like, take your best chance to take the lead in that game. The Giants, we saw, right, going for 2 early. The Giants, I'm okay with them putting it on their best play call, 1 play, because they're not the better football team. So that is important context. If you're an underdog and you want to say, hey, we don't like our chances if this game is prolonged, we got to go win it now. I love that. And that's kind of how I felt with Cincinnati, because although I think both teams were really having a hard time getting stops, I do think Baltimore is better. And I thought, look, get your best play out there. You have a chance not to win the game, but potentially to win the game. Don't leave it up to overtime. Don't leave it up to a coin toss. Don't prolong this thing if you have a chance to win it now. What's really interesting, and what makes this more complicated, is Baltimore did still have 38 seconds and 2 timeouts. So the analytics actually said there was a slightly higher win probability for the Bengals if they didn't go. The reason being that there's more implied aggression if they get it, obviously, because now the Ravens have to go win the game in regulation if they're down 1, as opposed to having a chance to win the game with 38 seconds and 2 timeouts. But if they're tied, they don't feel the same pressure. They're not going to be as aggressive. And because they're a really good offense, them being more aggressive is not a good thing for you because they might score in that situation. So I get that. Still, though, I lean slightly on the side of 1 play for our offense. Is it more likely that our defense gets a stop with 38 seconds as opposed to, a legitimate full drive for the Ravens? I think so. Let's see if we can play 1 more play of good offense, 38 seconds of good defense. So I was good with their decision to go for it.
I was too. And I know that a lot of people don't have the same, I don't know, game theory as me. I'm gonna take the points guy through and through, man. But I was impressed the Ravens were even able to, the Bengals were even able to get, back in there, man. They hung with a real contender. Sucks their defense isn't any good.
Yeah, it's not.
Who are you taking for that final wild card spot? I think I'll take the Bengals, man. I think the Bengals can do it
too. I just think they're the best team. So maybe I'd have to look really in depth at the schedule. I know we talked about this last week, but I said the Bengals last week. I think I'd say the Bengals still. Speaking of the future, Logan, Bills Chiefs next week. Massive, massive game. I will say Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid all need to be healthy, or at least 2 of them. Can we get 2 out of the 3 of them? That'd be nice. But if that is the case, then I'm very, very excited for that game. But that's a week from now. We've already yapped for 2 hours about this week, and so now we're done. It's over. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, the good news is there's plenty more Nerd Sesh content. You can find all of our NFL stuff on our YouTube channel, all of our full shows. You can also find all of our NBA content, which there is an abundance of right now, all of our full shows and our video essays as well, video breakdowns. I did 2 last week, 1 on Jokic, who has only played at an even more insane level, arguably, since I did that video, and also 1 on Evan Mobley, who is having an awesome breakout season. So you can check those out and subscribe to stay tuned for more of them. You can listen to our show across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social media, TikTok at NerdSesh, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see all of our trivia content, to see clips from the show, to see graphics from the show, to stay tuned in with all of our updates. And you can join our Discord if you want to become part of the family, join the dialogue there, be part of the NerdSesh community. That's always a good time. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.